In this episode of the OrangeNerd Show, I'm talking to Mr. Seymour Duck and George the Italiano. We are breaking down Inside Out 2, massive success, opening weekend, breaking records, making all kinds of moolah. We're gonna break it down. Like, what's going on here? What happened? Why is this thing such a big hit? We're gonna talk about it up next on this episode of the OrangeNerd Show. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55.
Young blow, but I'm built like an OG.
There we go. George, you can let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And I've been MIA for a little bit. I've been on vacation out on the West Coast at Disneyland, visiting OG and some other people, but it was very nice. I had a great time, but it's also great to be back in the OG 55 studio.
Yeah, you met a lot of people. I mean, you always meet me. I'm always meeting up with you when you come down here. But we actually hung out with Mondo and Danny from Five Fires. Mm-hmm. You met up with Theme Park Casual. A lot of people. You had a very busy week, George.
Yeah,
to say the least. Yeah, but it's awesome. But it won't be too long until you're out here again because we're gonna have our OG 55 meetup in August. So that's gonna be pretty cool. Mr. Seymour Duck, it is always awesome having you here nerding out with us. Welcome aboard, sir.
Hello. I'm glad to be back, and like you said, nerding out.
Absolutely. If you could let everybody home know where they could find you on X.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There he is. Make sure you follow Mr. Seymour Duck. He does a lot of great financial analysis. He's funny. He's got a great sense of humor. But if you're into Disney and you're into like Nintendo, he is definitely your guy. So make sure you follow him on X. Let's get this guy to 1,000 followers. All right, here we go. We got this. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. Okay, interesting stuff. Box office. Inside Out 2 delivers historic 155 million U.S. opening and a 295 million globally and huge Pixar comeback. Now, this is interesting because I think the budget for this thing was like $200 million. So it's off to a fantastic start. But the sequel boasts the second biggest opening of all time in North America, and the biggest ever worldwide when compared to like markets. Real quick here, I just want to say, in a joyous comeback for Pixar, the tentpole opened to a massive $155 million domestic over the Father's Day weekend, well ahead of an expected $90 million. To secure the second biggest animated launch of all time for the 3-day weekend, not adjusted for inflation. It also did historic business overseas, where it opened to a record 140 million for a global total of 295 million, the biggest opening of all time for an animated film in like-to-like markets when accounting for exchange rate. So this is interesting. Okay, this is very, very interesting. I'll start with you, Seymour. What are your overall thoughts on this, man? And there's been a lot of conversations over the past few years about Disney and Pixar and
they're just crumbling like crazy. I mean, 295 million globally. I mean, they're hurting.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of opinions out there the past few years. But what are your takes on this, Seymour?
One thing I wanted to point out is that there was another article I was reading saying that it was only 60% of international that was released. So that's pretty impressive.
Very, yeah.
That would make sense because I remember just seeing the numbers. I think it came from Korea, if I'm not mistaken. It pulled in 12 million.
Yeah, which is pretty solid from that part of the world. So interesting stuff.
But yeah, what I find really astonishing about this is that they all came in at the beginning, right at the front. It was really like upfront with a lot of people buying, and a lot of people buying pre-sale tickets coming in and then just going in, and you don't have that word of mouth yet saying that everyone's saying, oh, the movie's good, even though the movie is good. Well, that's a plus. A lot of these lately with these Disney movie, a lot of them don't want to go and see it yet. They want to know if the movie's good first. So the seats haven't been that great up front. And then if the movie's not good, the seats die down. But this one, they just it's gonna be, you know, upfront real good, and then it's gonna have legs. Like, think about Elemental, right? Where it's a good movie, but it up front, it wasn't that great, but it had legs because it was a good movie. This,
Yeah.
you're getting the best of both worlds, because I think it's the IP, the familiarized IP here,
Yes.
and I think people just already trust that IP. They already know that it's going to be good. They already seen the first one. They can go on Disney Plus and see it. So then when they go see the second one, they're like, okay, we already know what we're getting into. So they're not going to be like scared of what's can happen. And there you go. And I think this is good. This is really good. This is the pivotal point for Disney to come back and bring it in. And I think I've been saying it on X and in the DMs. I think 2024 is Disney's year.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Now, there was this narrative for the longest time that the reason why Disney and Pixar movies underperform in the box office and then crush it on streaming is because parents were afraid of woke messaging in these films. You know, that there was a huge concern, according to some people, that there was so much woke messaging in Disney and Pixar movies that parents don't trust the brands anymore, right? So what they were doing was they were avoiding the theater and waiting for it to come on streaming so parents can kind of pre-screen these movies in advance. Now, the issue, now this comes at issue with Inside Out 2, because this movie kind of destroys that whole narrative and that whole opinion, in my opinion, because here's the thing, like Seymour said, here's an article, Inside Out 2, pre-sale numbers beating out the original. Okay, so this was from, I think, June 10th, so like maybe about a week ago. If there was this big concern with parents overall about Disney and Pixar and messaging, and that they have to go in there and wait for streaming to pre-screen these movies for their kids because they're afraid of woke messaging, then why were these parents buying up Inside Out 2 tickets before they even saw the movie? I mean, when you pre-sale, they don't know, like you said, Seymour, they don't know if it's going to be, you know, woke or not. So that whole narrative about like this whole thing about the brand damage and parents having to pre-screen these films before, and that's why no one's going to the theaters on opening weekend for Disney movies and Pixar movies. This movie completely destroyed that narrative. What are your thoughts on that, Seymour? Then I'll go to you, George.
There was another example I wanted to give. Barbie. Barbie came out in 2023, right? And I remember on X people saying that this was the wokest movie ever, and that the second weekend it's gonna get destroyed, and it's gonna be the flop. I saw one tweet saying that it was going to be the biggest flop for a movie in history. That never happened, and then they went all quiet because it made $1.4 billion. They once said, "Oh, it might have a little bit of legs because the young women, but it's going to collapse." And I'm like, $1.4 billion from all young women they spent? I was like, no, I think the general audience just doesn't care about this this culture war that I see online. They simply just don't care. If it's a good movie, it's a good movie. And if the IP, they know Barbie, and if it was interesting, and I think that's what happened with Barbie. The word of mouth was just so good that every week it actually got better and better.
Yeah, no, exactly, and you're right. And they try to do the same thing with Super Mario. Remember, they were trying to.
Yep.
Remember, all the talk about Peach and how she's woke, but the minute that movie started to do well,
yeah, that's the first time I met. I was interacting with these culture war users when the Mario movie came out, and I'm like, huh? Peach was always in video games. She's always been a badass. I'm like, if you were a Nintendo fan, you would have known that. I'm like, what's happening here? And then, as soon as, the week after week was showing that Mario was doing well, those videos got deleted. But I'm like, people were saving thumbnails. It's all on the internet. If once you post on the internet, it's on the internet. We know what happened. Everyone remembers what happened. We're not stupid. But yeah, they got upset because she's a badass wearing pants. I'm like, what?
Well, and she's been a playable character since like the second Mario Brothers video game, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. I wear pants. Like it's like
yeah, and your nickname is Peach. What do you know? No, I'm kidding. What do you think, George? What's your opinion on this, brother?
well, I do have to say I am a real peach.
You are.
So I do have to say, even when speaking of these films in wokeness too, it's completely inaccurate, even if there was hypothetically something in there that is considered woke, because everyone's interpretation of wokeness is completely different. You can have try to keep tallies on going to each person of saying, what's your definition of woke? And each person would have a different description, because really there is no one way or another of what you would consider to be woke. So even that alone would flush that theory down the toilet. Now, speaking of a person like myself who have seen the movie today, I have to say it's a phenomenal movie. It definitely history in the making. I remember when this occurred with the Toy Story franchise, where a lot of people were concerned off the back of the success of the original, how Toy Story 2 was going to turn out. And it ended up becoming basically a more success than the original. And I feel like in this case, I still love the original. I have it playing on behind me as we speak, but number 2 has such a different feel to it. It was a continuation 1 year later after the first film took place, but it had a completely different tone to it. I love the new characters that were added, the new emotions. I love how, without giving too much away, I love how each of the emotions had their own almost like same amount of screen time. It wasn't just like, oh, here's a new character, you see them for 5 minutes and then they're gone. It's basically the old emotions had their own kind of storyline and issues that they had to deal with to try to help Riley, but the new emotions had their own storyline and how their interpretation was to help Riley. And I will say, whether you're a child, a teenager, an adult, elderly, whether you're coming from a place of self-doubt, definitely know your self-worth. And each person has their own kind of way of coping with things and handling things. And believe it or not, the mind is very strong and it can take a hold of you. It could be very controlling, but it's, kind of relinquish all of that and just be who you are. And that should be good enough.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. As a content creator, or even as anybody, just even if you don't make content, you're just on the internet. Here's kind of something that I always think about. People are going to hate on you regardless. Okay, so there's no point in trying to adjust your opinions or what you say because you're worried you're going to get hate. You can adjust your opinions, you can censor yourself all day long, and you're still going to have haters. So you might as well be authentic. You might as well be yourself and say say how you feel. That's how I see it, because they're going to come for you anyway. They're going to hate on you anyway. Okay, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Be yourself, and hey, you know what? If they hate on you for being yourself, well, at least you're being yourself. And,
exactly. And that touches upon big in the film. And there are some moments where, and it's definitely not bad, but you definitely see some moments where you could think, wow, I can't believe that's being showcased, especially in an animated film. But it shows the realism. It shows the humanistic side of that people can go through this stuff on an everyday basis, especially when the emotion of anxiety takes over your mind, your body, and it's like what it can do to you and how it progresses, that you don't know what's going on even within inside of you until sometime it hits that breaking point and it gets a little too late and you're on borderline of collapse, so to speak.
Anxiety is a son of a bitch. I swear to God, I suffer from anxiety disorder, and I have for many years. I could literally watch a commercial or a TV show, for example. But I can't watch medical shows because I'll have every disease that they talk about, and I'll have the symptoms too, like after I watch it. I mean, anxiety is a cruel, horrible thing to have. it's horrible. So I'm definitely going to watch this movie because I think it'll hit close to home for me. Now, Seymour, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the culture war and all that stuff. It's funny because I think you're right about this. I really want to get your opinion on it. I kind of want to deep dive into this a little bit because we've heard for so many years that the problem with Disney and Pixar too is the messaging, and they're just losing the average family, right? And then Inside Out 2 comes along and it's doing buco bucks, okay? So it's like, how much is this? I mean, is the culture war like so overblown that it's like the normies don't care at all? I mean, is that where we're at? And does this kind of prove that, or where do you stand with this?
I think they just don't simply care, and they created something because something bad happened with Disney, so they're trying to take advantage of it. And now when something positive is happening, they're pivoting and saying, "Oh, it's not woke." And that's that's what I'm seeing. Because like when something's successful, like Barbie and Mario, right? The wokeness went away, and now it's because the movie was good, or they just stay quiet. But I mean, like people are telling me that on X that like Encanto and Wish was woke, and I'm like, huh? Because that's why they flopped. And I'm like, okay, but they were number one when they went on Disney Plus. So I mean, you were telling me they boycotted Disney Plus, but then they're number one on Disney Plus, and even Lightyear. Lightyear was number 3 on the top 10 list on Nielsen charts when it was on Disney Plus. I mean, those numbers are like tremendous to be for a movie that people are canceling because it's woke. I'm like, who's watching these movies if everyone's supposed to boycott?
Right. No, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then I'm like, wait, if Encanto and Wish is woke, then okay, then Mulan is woke, Pocahontas is woke, Aladdin is woke. I mean, Raya and the Last Dragon is woke. I mean, like, and then is it because the female leads? And then we got to go all the way back to Cinderella because, and then Snow White. Because I don't understand. What makes them woke? I don't like.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, that's what George was touching upon, where it's so subjective, it almost means nothing at this point. And then here's the other thing too, in that you're right. The narratives and the conversations change depending on how good these movies do, and I think there's a reason for that. It's because the whole centerpiece of this argument is go woke, go broke. So if you have a movie that's doing really well, that runs counter to go woke, go broke. So you can't have a $1 billion Mario movie and call it woke, because then you destroy your own argument. Because then you're admitting, hey, a woke movie can do well. So what they do is then they'll just move what it means to be woke. Okay, well, this is no longer woke because it made $1 billion, right? Inside Out 2 is not woke because it made $1 billion. I guarantee you, though, if Inside Out 2 flopped this weekend, there'd be 1,000 YouTube videos and X tweets about how this movie has all kinds of woke messaging. Go ahead, Seymour.
I was going to say that, and then people on X are trying to compare that it's the profitability that makes it not woke. But then I'm like, I don't care about the profitability of a movie anymore. It's about the eyeballs. If you have more people seeing a movie, how can you say there's backlash if they're seeing the movie? So, and they're telling me like, oh, the movie, Garfield has $60 million, so it's doing better than a lot of the movies that Disney did. I'm like, but it's only 178 million. I mean, how can you say it's doing better than when Elemental did 500 million? I'm not understanding this.
Yeah,
I'm very confused. It's almost like it's the narrative that because Garfield isn't tied to the Disney name, the Disney brand, suddenly it's perfectly fine. No matter what goes on with it, and no matter what the numbers are.
And I think we have to adjust ourselves. I don't think we're there yet, but we have to adjust ourselves where it's not just the movie theater numbers that matter, because Disney is like a big company where revenues are all over the place. It's a big flywheel company, right? So where if one time the parks are not doing well, but the movies are doing well, then that's good for the company. And they work with each other back and forth. And same thing with streaming. So when you saw a lot of movies not doing well, but then they were doing well for streaming, it was benefiting for Disney. I don't understand this notion where if one company, one sector, one small sector, 1/4, right? that is doing bad, then the whole company is going down the drain. What? Their revenues have been growing since COVID. They haven't been losing numbers. The parks have been packed. There might have been a slowdown as some months, but they're not empty. And they have increased prices, and people are not leaving. They're not boycotting. I don't know this notion of like people saying that the brand withdrawal and all that. It's not happening, and I think we have to focus through with all the entities with Disney, right? All the like you have to think of the movies, the streaming, the theme parks, and the the licensing and all that. But people don't realize that as much. They just focus, oh, movies doing bad, it must be doing bad everywhere else in the business, but that's not true.
Right. And if it's bad, it must be because it's woke. And it's like, well, that's also not true. And I've been saying this for a long time. When Spider-Verse came out, I was saying that movie did very well. The normie, the soccer mom, taking all her kids to that movie, that soccer mom has no idea about the intricacies of the Sony Marvel deal. They go to that movie assuming Spider-Man, Disney. They weren't withholding their money from Spider-Verse because Disney brand is so damaged and so woke. No, they took their kids to it because you know why? Spider-Man is a legacy IP, just like Inside Out is, and just like Mario is, and they trust. Right now, it seems like existing IPs, families are willing to go to the theaters for those. Mm-hmm. That's what it's about. It wasn't about Disney's brand damage and families staying home because Disney's so bad. No, they went to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is very much Spider-Verse, and Spider-Man is very much a Disney property in the minds of the normie. The normie doesn't know about Sony. Okay, we do because we deal with it all day long and talk about it. But they went to that theater thinking it was a Disney movie and had no problem doing it.
Yep, because the characters themselves are recognizable. And as Seymour was saying earlier, a lot of people, recognize this as a familiar IP. And with right now, it's second. Inside Out 2 is second to The Incredibles 2 for the notion because everyone was already anticipated on The Incredibles after the success of the first one. A lot of people were saying of how it ended. Okay, we're definitely going to get a sequel. Well, many years later, how long it took, we finally got the sequel to The Incredibles 2. So it was a huge success. The track of how Inside Out, it's about a 9-year difference between the first Inside Out to the sequel, but again, it's characters that people understand, they know, they relate to, and also too, it's a compelling story. It adds new characters, it adds a whole new kind of depth to Riley as a character herself as she's growing up and getting older, and the body changes, the mind changes, you get new emotions, so, and I think it's very relatable to no matter what age you are. OG, you were saying, you have anxiety, and it's like you could be 13 or you can be, 43, you could be 53, you could be you could be 83. It's like everyone can have some sort of connection to this film. And that's how it always was with Disney films and Pixar films, is you can always find some sort of connection to say, you could look at a certain character and say, I'm that character, or I understand that character. I know what that character is going through. And it just has that compelling heart to it that a lot of other companies don't really incorporate in their films.
Yeah, I'm very curious. You're right. There's a big relatability factor with this movie, because like you said, I'm in my 40s and I can relate to it with anxiety. And then there's fans, young ladies who are maybe Riley's age who would relate to it big time as well. It's a very relatable thing. It's a 4-quadrant film. I think that it's a strong start, number one, but it's also getting great reviews. So it's going to have legs. I don't know. I talked to Seymour about it. What do you think, George? You think this thing could maybe possibly get to Mario numbers or even surpass it?
I will say that, one can argue and say, oh, well, of course it's doing well at the box office. It's a sequel. Here's the thing. You could also have a very bad sequel too. I have seen them and the numbers, projected off of that. So it doesn't necessarily mean because it's an actual sequel, I think it also goes by, as I said, you can find relatable characters, a storyline, what have you. But to your question, OG, I feel like, honestly, we really could. I think, the fact that article stated that this is a historic moment in a sense for Pixar, for any animated film, that it's achieving incredible feat just within the opening weekend. I think honestly, we really could see some numbers up to the Super Mario Brothers movie. Definitely.
Yeah, we talked about it, Seymour. You agree? You think that it's a possibility?
Yeah, if the sequel does well, according to a lot of the Disney movies, they outperform the original one. Like Frozen was 1.28 billion, Frozen 2 was 1.45 billion. So if the movie actually does well, which we're seeing like it's doing well, the reviews are good, and I think it's gonna have legs and go there. Yeah.
Interesting.
And especially with the IP of Inside Out, we're going to be getting the Disney Plus series based off of like the dream studios of what goes on inside, Riley's mind when she's dreaming. And so or maybe, I don't know if it's based off of Riley, but just in general, the dream studios. So we're going to be getting that. I think honestly, with the success of this, I mean, we could potentially be looking at, dare I say it, an Inside Out 3. I know a lot of people don't really care about like saying, oh, it's sequel after sequel. But here's the thing. If nobody really cares, why are we seeing these numbers? So obviously there is a demographic that does care about these movies. So it's like if people are going, Disney is going to deliver for them because it's also filling up their bank accounts as well.
Yeah, there is a gap because the people that you're hearing, George, are the people in like the theme park or nerd space. Like those people, like I've said this a long time and a lot of people don't really understand this. Our bubble, including us, I'm not we're just as much a part of this bubble as any other person that's on Diz Twitter. You know what I'm saying? But in our bubble, it's a different conversation than the normies. The normies want Frozen 2 and Frozen 3. The normies want the Spider-Man restaurant on the cruise. Okay. The normies want the IP. They want the Elsa ride. They want that stuff. Yes, I get it. Us diehard theme park nerds, we want some non-IP thing, but the vast majority of people don't want that. You know what I'm saying? They want to take their kids to something like this, Inside Out 2. That's what they want. Or Super Mario Brothers. That's what they want, And there's a huge gap. And I think as fans, as diehard fans, we have to separate ourselves a little bit from it and kind of try to put our normie hat on and sort of see it from a normie's perspective. People do care about it. This movie wouldn't be doing the numbers that it's doing if people didn't care. Obviously they do. And and that's why Disney is leaning into these sequels. And they kind of do well, with the normies.
And I think too, Disney's eyes are on this IP, this film. And I feel like, I know this is an OrangeNerd, but just speaking of the parks, we could potentially be seeing a lot more integration with Inside Out into the parks themselves, because we're already starting to see that with Moana. Moana did great in theaters, but it wasn't really nothing to kind of, really gawk at. But I mean, she made the money, but on Disney Plus, she's still doing banger numbers of viewpoints, and now they're incorporating her more with the meet and greets and the parades. And honestly, I think we're going to be starting to see some Moana attractions aside from the walkthrough attraction that's already at Epcot. But I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of Moana integrated in the parks on all levels on both coasts and even internationally.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's interesting. That's very, very interesting.
There's one thing I wanted to say about being in a bubble, especially being on X or Twitter. X, keep saying Twitter. X has 450 million users monthly, and 70% of that is US, 20% of that is Japan, and then the rest of the world. That's not a lot of people outside of Japan and US giving their opinions. Where if you have Meta, where it is Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, you have 3 billion users daily. So there's a big difference. So when we're talking about like the general audience, the normies, a lot of them are not on X. They're actually on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. And we don't actually see what they're talking about on X because they're not on there. And I'm seeing like a lot of the algorithm on X being pushed in for a lot of the stuff that seems to be like where it pushes you so you can comment, like sometimes rage bait or hate, so that you feel compelled to comment and reply. I've noticed that, but anyways, but it to me, I don't get the feel on X for what the general audience actually wants. It kind of feels like a smaller bubble compared to everyone else around the world. And even in China, you don't even get to hear people from China. And Deadpool and Wolverine just today was announced that they're going to be in China. So it's like, yeah, we don't know like half the world almost what they're thinking of this movie. And we do when the numbers come out. And people
Exactly.
vote with their wallets. So when they see this movie doing great, then Disney's like, okay, we'll put attractions in the park because people want to see this.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. This movie changed. This movie, oh man, I have to say, this movie, the box office for this thing, completely decimated some narratives that have been going around for the past few years about Disney and Pixar animation. Completely decimated these narratives of this brand damage and this parents don't trust Disney anymore, or they don't trust Pixar anymore. They're just too woke. This movie completely just decimated all that.
Have you ever seen the show Friends, where Ross Geller takes the couch and says pivot, and they're trying to
Yep.
That's what they're doing. They're pivoting now, and they're screaming at everyone to pivot.
Yeah, and they're screaming for everyone to pivot, and you know what my response is Chandler's response to Ross: shut up, shut up, shut up.
Well, there is a pivot. I see it. I absolutely see it, and that's the thing that's frustrating. Seymour is like, look, if I make a prediction, or if I have a speculation or an opinion, and my opinion or my speculation doesn't pan out, I'll take the L and just be like, hey, you know what? I thought it was going to go this way. It didn't go that way. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand the pivot. I don't understand why folks can't just say, hey, look, you know what? Hey, I thought it was this X, Y, and Z. It turned out it wasn't. It's all good. I take the L and I live to, I live to see another day. Life goes on.
And here's the thing: when
the narrative is that important to like grasp onto, you got to
And when those people justify why it may not be what they thought their original answer is, if you have to justify that and create a whole narrative and run like literally 10 pages as to why, it means this, why meant that, technically, on a technicality, you're saying you're wrong without actually saying you're wrong.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, man. It's interesting. It's a whole new world here now. I mean, it is, because this isn't the only Disney movie that's going to do well. I'm telling you right now that Deadpool and Wolverine movie is also going to crush it.
I'm with Seymour. Honestly, I think this is the comeback of the company as far as the studio side. Inside Out 2, I predicted was going to be Pixar's comeback. Great start. Moana 2 is going to be Disney animation comeback. Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be Marvel. I'm even going to just even say, I think even Mufasa, I think will do decent numbers for Disney live action. I don't know if it'll hit like the numbers all the other films will, but I think it'll do decent enough in the box office. And I could be wrong. It could flop, or it could even exceed my own expectations. And then of course, then you have Lucasfilm, as I said, where Kathleen Kennedy's sitting at her desk drinking blue milk saying, oh, we have to release a movie.
Right, yeah. Well, to be fair, yeah, no, you're right. In Lucasfilm, I have been frustrated with them. Now, if the Mando and Grogu movie does get released like they are promising, the first movie out the gate, that's a Filoni thing and a Favreau thing. That should do very, very well. But we'll see. The thing with Lucasfilm is that you don't know. Is it going to get released? I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. That's the problem with it. But any thoughts, Seymour, on that in terms of the outlook going forward? Like he mentioned Mufasa.
Mufasa. That's the one movie that I'm intrigued, because I'm wondering if it's going to be like Inside Out 2, where the IP is already recognizable, familiarized to the point where, okay, you might do better than the actual first one. I don't know, because, when I'm looking at the reviews now for the live action Lion King, the story wasn't different at all. It was just simply live action, right? It got 88% on Rotten Tomato. People like that movie. Because like we were talking about, we're still in a bubble, so maybe we might not like the movie. I thought it was just a plain simple live action, nothing different. But this new movie is completely different. And I think it's going to cater probably to both of us, the normies and the fans. And it might surprise us. It might actually do better because it's a recognizable IP.
I think you're on something with that, Seymour, with Mufasa, because it's a recognizable IP and there's a curiosity factor. It's Mufasa's story. So, and we don't know that story. You know what I'm saying? Like, one of the problems I have with the live action remakes is, by and large, they're pretty much retellings of the animation. Like, they throw in some new stuff here and there, some new scenes or whatever, even some new songs. But by and large, it's pretty much a retelling of what we got before. Mufasa, I have no idea what that story is going to be. But it's a Lion King IP, though. So it's possible that movie does really, really well.
My only concern actually really isn't with the characters, with the storyline, because I'm intrigued. And nothing against this person. I think he's very talented. He does very well. But for me, and I think we've talked about it before, it's a hit or miss that they have Lin-Manuel Miranda. Kind of, I believe is he tied to Mufasa?
I haven't heard that. I don't know. I honestly, though, full disclosure, I haven't really followed.
That was Moana.
I know he is Moana, but I could have sworn that something showed that he was something part of the music with Mufasa. I could be wrong. I might have gotten some mixed up because I thought I saw it briefly at the end of one of the trailers, like when it was saying like the voice actors' names, where it said Beyonce and Blue Ivy.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that,
yeah. My concern with that is, for me, his style of music is kind of a hit or miss for me. I think he did great with Moana. I think he did great with Mary Poppins Returns. He was phenomenal with Hamilton. But
I hate to splash cold water on you, but I actually learned this from our good friend OrangeNerd recently. He starred in Mary Poppins Returns, but he didn't do the music for it. And that actually kind of bummed me out, because that was one of the things I was like,
so does
okay.
does that actually kind of like,
because that was a good
perspective. Like, could he have done different songs in Mary Poppins Returns?
Well, I like the songs in that movie, and that's why I was like, okay, Lin-Manuel, like, he did good in that one, but then he didn't end up even doing that one.
Yeah. Gosh, so when you have a film in the state of the Lion King realm, I just hope he does the music justice, because you're coming off of a banger soundtrack, as our friend Kaylee always says, where you have Elton John and Tim Rice that just like did the whole soundtrack phenomenal, and it was, I just hope that it doesn't dilute everything, because obviously the music is going to play a big part within the story.
You had Elton John doing the music. Elton John and Tim Rice, I believe, right?
Correct.
The original Lion King. Some big shoes to fill, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I mean, Lin-Manuel, he's a talented guy. He is. I'm not going to diminish him but there are some songs that he does that I'm like, that doesn't fit. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is like I feel like the problem with Lin-Manuel is that it's a Lin-Manuel song no matter what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? He can do a fairy tale and he'll have like that little rap thing in the middle. Like, it's like, that's what bothers me. And I love rap. I'm a huge rap fan, you know what I'm saying? But there's a time and place sort of thing. And I feel like when he does that, it's like, I don't know. I wish he was sort of like, his style is too Lin-Manuel. That's what I'm trying to say. So when it's in a Disney movie, it just seems like a Lin-Manuel song. A lot of times. Not always, but a lot of times, And that's my big issue with him. But we'll see.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm very excited and anticipating on Mufasa. Actually, it showed the preview today during Inside Out 2, and actually my son even saw it, and he was like, oh, we have to go see that. He was intrigued. As a 14-year-old, he looked at it because it was something, and I asked him, I said, Josh, what makes you want to see it? He said, this movie is not going to be predictable.
That's exactly what I just said. See, exactly. It's not a remake. It's kind of like, and I don't remember how they did. I thought the Maleficent movies did decent, if I'm not mistaken.
It did a little over, just domestically, a little over 240 million.
Oh, really? Okay. Because those movies were kind of the same idea, where they took an IP, but they sort of gave us a storyline that we weren't familiar with. And I was more interested in those movies than I was like The Little Mermaid, because Little Mermaid's a retelling, So we'll see if Mufasa, if it's successful. Moana 2, I think that franchise is huge right now. I mean, I would be shocked.
You should have heard, because that that trailer also released with Inside Out 2. They didn't even show her. They just showed the opening scene where you saw the sand on the island, the water coming up on the shore, the shells, and these kids were shouting out Moana, Moana, like if someone didn't even know what it was, but they knew it, like right off the bat. And I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be, if we think Inside Out 2 is successful, wait till Moana comes out.
That's what I'm saying, dude. This is going to be one of the biggest openings. I think Moana 2, I'm calling it right now, will be one of the biggest animated openings of all time.
Yeah.
This franchise has proven itself. It's a little under a decade old now, 2016. And the kiddos are still watching that on Disney Plus. And that's, to your point, Seymour, it's the flywheel. See, that's the thing too. A lot of people focus on the box office, which is important. Like the box office is something. It's not nothing. But with Disney, it matters less, because Disney has really, there's no other company on the planet. Universal is probably number 2 in terms of Hollywood studios, but even number 2, they're far and few between with the flywheel. You know what I'm saying? Disney can take a character from the 1930s and sell merch in their parks today. No other company's doing that. Like, not like that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, even though a movie might flop or underperform in the box office, it lives on in so many different ways at Disney, And
we even touched upon that, even with the parks, kind of segment to it, when we recorded about when Josh D'Amaro was making his announcement, everything, and they had the IPs shown behind him. We had different generations of IP that was showcased behind him. We had Snow White, we had Wish, we had The Jungle Book, we had Zootopia. It was just a plethora of Disney films that came out in different time eras. But you're right. No matter whether it was a flop or not, if the character is identifiable and it's like, hey, I know that character, that's Snow White, or, that's Nick Wilde, or, that's Asha, it's like, that's, sometimes, yeah, it doesn't go by the numbers. And I will say, honestly, speaking of the numbers and the butts in the seats, that theater today was packed. As packed, yeah. I think, that I've seen it pre-Pandy.
Yeah, and the theater chains, they needed it. They've been going through a dry spell right now. I'm telling you, Disney is coming through for the theater chains right now for sure, in a big way, and it will again for Deadpool. Go ahead, Seymour.
Oh no, I was just looking at the box office numbers of this year, and Inside Out 2 is already number 5.
Wow.
And Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which has legs, that's Disney as well, and the general entertainment side. That's number 4. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. This is a good year for Disney, I think. I think it's going to be a very good year for Disney. Now, I want to ask you, Seymour, what do you think about, because I know Despicable Me is coming with like the 4th sequel now. Look, it's not my thing, but the kiddos love it. I can't it's a powerful franchise. I got to admit it. It's not for me, but I can see that it has appeal. It does. I don't know why, but it does. But that's coming in, I believe, not August. I'm sorry, like July. I think early July, if I'm not mistaken. What do you think? What do you think that's going to do? Like, in terms of like, so Inside Out 2 is doing really well. Now, Inside Out, I think that it's going to have some legs because it's getting some good word of mouth. Despicable Me 4 is, I think, about a month away or so. So do you think that Despicable Me 4 will do these kind of numbers that Inside Out 2 is seeing? Or do you think that Inside Out 2 is still going to be pretty strong and it might cut into some of that Despicable Me 4 money? What do you think about that?
To be honest, I don't know. It's Minions, and it could go either way. I saw a review. I don't know if it was. I saw a review saying that the movie was hot. It was hot trash, and saying that it was just a mess, just putting ideas in there, and it was just like, oh, the kids are gonna have fun with this for the TikTok generation because it's just so many things all happening at once. And I'm like, huh? I don't know. Um,
Oh man, that sounds terrible.
And
Like,
I can understand that because I actually they played the preview in Inside Out 2 for Despicable Me 4, and you can kind of see that in the preview. Like it doesn't give like a full bar tone narrative of like what's really going to go on. You just see a whole bunch of different antics going off that you try to put a storyline together. That Gru now is a full-fledged father. He has a son now. That's basically really all that it's showcasing, and that his son doesn't really like him. That's basically all the rest of the trailer. You see the antics from the minions. You see like some kind of like spy, kind of James Bond kind of things, like with the family, but it doesn't really give off of like what really am I watching.
that's interesting. Yeah, I've seen some pretty negative reviews as well. Basically, like this is a messy movie, but the kids will love it, kind of stuff.
and I
That's
mean,
tough.
they have the track record. So I mean, like Despicable Me 3 got over 1 billion. So
Exactly.
I
Now,
mean, it's not our cup of tea, but the kids love it. So if that track record
yeah.
comes back for that summer, then yeah, it's gonna be a blockbuster success for them. Not for me, but for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Honestly, I would not bet. I would not bet against this franchise. Like you said, it's not for us, but I wouldn't bet against it. I'm thinking this thing is going to do very, very well. 1 billion, I don't know. I don't know if it'll do 1 billion again, because if it is kind of a on the bad side of a movie, like I don't know, because the kids might love it, but the parents still have to go with them to go see it. So if it's really bad and the parents don't want to sit through it again, then it might hurt the box office a little bit if it's a bad movie, and we'll have to wait and see on that. But overall, though, I'm not going to bet against it. I think it's going to do significant. Go ahead, George. I do apologize.
No, you're fine. Well, actually, when Josh was into Despicable Me when he was younger, as he got older, he finds it annoying and obnoxious, which thank God. But I remember going to see, I think it was number 3. I think it was number 3 in theaters. Yeah, like I mean, all the kids were in there, ready to watch it. I'm sticking my earbuds in, jamming out the Purple Rain. So that's
Oh,
so
geez.
that's
Well,
I didn't even really watch the movie.
And that's why I appreciate, for all the flaws that Disney and Pixar have, and they got a lot of flaws, and they've dropped some stinkers over the decades. They don't have a perfect track record, either studio, but by and large, Disney and Pixar movies, you can go take your kids to those movies and you get something out of it. The issue that I have with a lot of Universal animation is that it's purely for kids. I can't go to a Despicable Me or an Illumination movie except for Super Mario Brothers. That's the only Illumination movie I've ever loved. But by and large, it's kiddie fare. So it's like the parents sit there like you, George, with their earbuds in, bored as hell, and the kids are watching it. But with Pixar and Disney, at least you go and the parents get a little something out of it.
You're intrigued. Yeah.
Exactly. It really is more for the whole family. And, I don't know.
Now, I have a question for both of you. Now, I don't know if Disney actually officially announced this or not, but I have seen on social media that the runtime in theaters for Inside Out 2 was supposedly going to be 100 days, which is a little, I guess, over 3 months. Now, obviously, that was released after the fact, or before the fact the movie was opened. But I would have to think that Disney still had to see the pre-sale ticket purchases to still make that assumption. Do you think that was a right call for Disney to officially make that number rather than just like wait it out and see how long? Or do you think that actually they could change their minds if the movie is still doing well and has long legs, that it can surpass 100 days?
I think it could change. I remember the Super Mario Brother movie, and they kept delaying the digital release because of the success. They're like, oh no, we got to keep going, because they know that the tickets were still selling. And like, you got to keep going. And then Japan had a later release date, and then they're like, we can't release it before Japan gets released. And then they kept just delaying the digital release. And then they released the Blu-ray first, and then and then it went on streaming, and then it's still on Netflix in the Nielsen charts, in the top 10 for movies. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they delay it. If because after all, Disney is a business, and if it still has legs and it's still making money, they will delay it, and they will officially announce a delay too. I would hope, because if you're not, then somebody should call Bob Iger, because I'm like, come on, if the movie's doing great, why are we releasing on streaming so soon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a right call on Disney to solidify a number before actually seeing the opening weekend?
I think it was good because 100 days is not soon. I mean, that's like you're looking at like over 3 months.
It used to be like, wasn't it like 30 to 60 days before, like after COVID, they were trying to change the rules, and I know 100 days. I think 100 days is in the middle, and then if they need to move, sorry about that.
No worries.
But yeah, if they need to adjust the date, they can just adjust the date if needed to. I think that's a good middle ground for 100 days.
Yeah, and especially the start this movie has gotten. It's a good, very, very good start. 100 days, by then we'll reassess. But I mean, it's gonna go strong for a while, I think. And I think that gives enough time to sort of kind of like leg out and then in 100 days we'll kind of see where it's at. By the way, if they have to stretch it out past 100 days, this movie is bonkers successful, like crazy successful, because that would be absolutely wild if this thing is still pulling significant enough numbers where they'd have to go beyond 100 days. That's wild.
And I thought it was very smart too that the movie track record for this year, how Disney kind of placed them in the appropriate manner, where Inside Out 2, as far as for an animated film goes, as far as for Disney, is basically going to cover for the summer. Moana 2 is released in November. That's going to cover, for the winter holiday season. And then you have Deadpool and Wolverine, which wasn't, it's not really what you call like a family film, but I mean, it's coming out in the summer, which that's already projected for what, a 200 to 240 million opening weekend. That's crazy. That's
massive. I mean, I think like Infinity War and Endgame were pulling those kind of opening weekend numbers, if I'm not mistaken. We talked about that, Seymour, right?
Yeah, and they're reporting it to be conservative too for those numbers, and I'm like, what? I'm like, this is another point where everyone's now pivoting, saying that Marvel is back and the wokeness is gone. I'm like, what wokeness in Marvel? The story, like, I saw the Marvels and I didn't like it because the story was bad, not because it was woke. I don't understand what's woke. Stan Lee created these characters in the comic books. Are you telling me that Stan Lee is woke? He created She-Hulk. She-Hulk was just terrible. It was not because of the actor or it was the writing, and I guess the sloppy editing they had to do at the last minute because of budgeting. But still, a lot of this has to do with the writing. It was just bad. And it feels like it was rushed because they needed to bring in a lot of the Marvel movies up front because they can't do the other ones. And that's one of the hiccups they have with Marvel. And I think that's what they're trying to get away with Disney Plus and have their own storyline so they don't have to focus on that. But yeah, it's been pivoted once again.
Yeah, of course.
And it's a familiarized IP once again, like Deadpool and Wolverine, like this X-Men and Deadpool.
Right. Exactly. And you get to a point too where it's like, I just kind of feel like, in my opinion, I just kind of feel like it's almost like the woke term is almost as used as anything that flops is woke, and it's just like, it's almost like that's kind of like the label that gets put on everything, and it's kind of stupid. And then when it does well, it's obviously not woke, of course, It's like, oh, whatever. It's just stupid. It really is, in my opinion,
And I've seen it. They're trying really, really hard with Star Wars. And I'm seeing some stats saying that Star Wars is like in the top, the top 10 for like, for the views of shows. And I'm like, how could it be that bad if it's in the top 10?
For Acolyte?
Yeah. Some of the early numbers for streaming, right? And they're saying it's in the top 10. And then I saw another report saying, well, but it's not beating the unknown Netflix shows. And I'm like, no, Bridgerton is not an unknown Netflix show. What? Right. Remember, I was asking you if Bridgerton, everyone was telling me to watch Bridgerton. And And that's like number one. And then apparently that's an unknown Netflix show. And then number two was Eric. And I was just watching one episode of it right before this, and it's pretty good. It has Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah, I'm like, these are not unknown. These are good actors in good quality shows. And
Right.
And a lot of the stuff, with Netflix, that they release all their shows all at once, or they do it sometimes like half. And that's why it's like on top. But to see 2 episodes of Star Wars, right, to be in the top 10, that's tremendous. But apparently you have to try so hard to call Star Wars woke that the review bombers are reviewing the wrong movies.
Yeah,
Movies.
I saw that. So there was an Acolyte fan film or something that people are going on and downvoting, from what I understand, right?
And then another movie called The Acolyte that wasn't Star Wars related at all, and they were getting review bombed. And from what I'm seeing is that people are paying a service to get this review bombed because they're just looking at keywords. They're not even looking at it. And I saw some of the reviews, and some of the reviews were very like political, and it was in Spanish, and it was like, and then like Asian text, and I'm like, huh? But you're talking about like your political views in American? I'm like, what? I'm very confused. I'm like, what's happening here? They couldn't even get paid for the real good review bombers. They had to get the ones outsourced.
And we talked about that, and I said that Acolyte is so culture war charged, so to speak, where I don't trust the Rotten Tomatoes score. I still haven't seen the show. I might watch it and think it totally sucks. I haven't seen it yet, okay? I haven't really been that excited about it, to be quite honest with you. But I knew from the get-go, before the thing even premiered, that was going to happen. The culture warriors were going to go in there and downvote it because they think it's woke. It's so predictable. It's boring at this point with this stuff. It's so predictable. And now we're seeing evidence that that's exactly what they're doing with the review bombs. It's ridiculous. Go ahead, George.
And this really goes to show just how, just in society today, of how people utilize social media and how they use technology, is people's minds are constantly running, where it's like they don't even focus on really what they're reading or paying attention to what they're clicking on. It's like what we were talking about with Despicable Me 4, of how, Seymour, you were saying like, okay, this is good for young kids. It's good for the TikTok users because it's a bunch of things happening at once. It's basically how society is running everyday life. It's like people don't even know it's like people are in such a rush to get to nowhere. And it's like in particular, yes.
Nice little Mr. Toad reference there, Yeah, it's crazy. Go ahead, Seymour.
There's one thing I wanted to point out is that
Sure.
a lot of the TV shows, you can't authenticate that you've seen the TV show or movie if it's on a streaming service. But on, let's say, an actual movie theater, they do, and you can actually verify your tickets and provide them your tickets. For example, Lightyear is at 84% for Rotten Tomatoes. You don't see that getting a low score.
Oh, that's interesting. It's at 84, right? Really?
Yeah, 84% verified, right? But now if you go look at the other scores where on TV shows, for example, The Boys, they're getting review bombed because apparently it took them 4 years to realize it was a political show. And now they're realizing that it's a political show. So these people are now review bombing because they're realizing the superheroes are really the right-wing Americans. But anyways.
Wait a minute. Hold on. This is funny. I didn't know this. Okay, so it's the same anti-woke people that are review bombing the Boys because they think it paints like conservatives in a bad light. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't realize this till now. It took them 4 years to realize this.
I think
now they're reviewing bombing.
I only seen like 2 seasons, I think it was, of that, and I love the show. I got to catch up, but it was pretty evident Homelander was kind of like a ball bag from pretty much the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. But now because apparently they just found out, they woke up to the wokeness, and
they woke up to the wokeness,
and now they're review bombing. See, none of this means anything to me with this.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. That's why I don't trust any of this. That's why I said I don't trust the Rotten Tomatoes stuff. I don't trust any of that.
Yeah,
because you have so many activists out there, like you were saying, Seymour, like going in there and like trying to alter these scores to make some sort of political point. It's stupid. Go ahead. I do apologize.
Especially when it was 40% before even the show was released.
It was 40% before it was even
For the
released.
Acolyte, yeah, for Star Wars. And it kept going lower because after it was released, people kept review bombing even more. But it was at 40% before it even released. And I have screenshots. Me and Slimer was talking about it. I was like, well, how is it already at 40%? It's not even out yet. Like,
Well, that's why I don't take the Tiana Bayou Adventure stuff seriously either. Like the YouTube video, like people were making a big fuss, excuse me, over the downvotes. What do you think was going to happen with that? It's like the Acolyte. Of course, they're going to go in there, downvote. The normies are not downvoting this video. The normies, I've said this before. We talked a lot about it today on the show, right? The gap between the nerds and the normies. The normies are not that invested in the theme of Splash Mountain. Most normies go on that thing for the drop. Okay, it's a passing thought. Oh yeah, Zippity Doodah, that song. Oh yeah, I remember that or whatever. It's not like the Disney diehards that are like so obsessed with it. It's not that big of a deal for the normies. All those down, I bet you a lot of those down. I'm not gonna say all because but a vast majority of those downvotes are activists, people going on there, and it's some sort of culture war BS, and they're mad over the ride. I guarantee that's what a bulk of that stuff is. It's not your soccer mom or any normie general public,
Not to mention a lot of those downvotes, which we talked about before, could also be the quality of the video, or it could be how it was presented. It doesn't necessarily mean the downvote was necessarily for the ride itself.
I had a comment actually in one of our Tiana videos that said, yeah, I downvoted the point of view, the POV video, because it was terrible quality, not because I don't like Tiana's. I had a person in my comments actually admit that that's why they downvoted it. So I don't trust any of that stuff. I really don't. I think there's so much activism out there on both sides, to be fair, but I don't trust it. I'll see it for myself and kind of go from there. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I was just gonna say a lot of normies, including myself. I'm a normie for the theme parks. We don't even know some of the attractions until we get to Disney parks. We don't know. We will go to just the Disney name itself. That's why we're going, and we heard great things, so we go there. And a lot of the attractions, right? I don't know their names. I don't know any of them. Basically, I'm just gonna go there and then see it on the map and then go.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, even there for decades, people thought that Anastasia and like Fern Gully were Disney movies. Well, now they technically are, but back in the day they weren't. But I remember like my friends in like at school would think they were like Disney movies. Like I'm so many times this has happened.
Fern Gully, Anastasia, Thumbelina.
Right.
They all thought was Disney movies. And actually, the actress who does the voice of Anxiety just recently did an interview. You can I think you can catch it on YouTube. She thought Shrek was a Disney movie. She was not aware that Shrek was DreamWorks.
Yeah, it's just exactly. So it's like the normies aren't as invested. They don't care as much about your Splash Mountain as you do. And if you care about it, that's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying that like it's not the normies that are downvoting that Tiana video. I'm telling you that right now.
And also the Page Master, I thought that was a Disney movie for the longest time.
Right. See, I'm telling you, there's a huge divide between the nerds and the normies. So it's interesting. But Seymour, and then I'll go to you, George. Any final thoughts on Inside Out 2 before we take off?
Tremendous job on everyone who worked on the film. Your efforts are being shown, and it's getting rewarded.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we talked a little bit on X about it. Like it's technically. It technically beat Super Mario, but at the end of the day, this is good for fans. Yeah. Mario Brothers crushed it, and Mario Brothers should be extremely proud of what they accomplished with their box office and that film. Same with Inside Out 2. I'm glad that all these studios are getting some wins in here. It's good for us as fans. It's good for the studios.
Yeah. Thankfully, it was not a Minion type movie for Mario.
Oh, thank God, dude. Yes, thank God.
The only Illumination movie that I like.
You and me both. I can't sit through the Illumination movies. I just can't sit through them. If I had kids,
Mario and Sing for me. I actually enjoyed Sing.
Oh, you like Sing? Okay.
Yeah, I did enjoy Sing. I think Sing has a little bit more of a, I don't know, like a kind of charming quality to it. I think like with the music and everything, I can actually sit
Interesting.
through it. Minions and Despicable Me, no, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I haven't seen Sing. I might have to check it out. If you say it's good, I'll trust you.
I think you would like Sing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot. I'm open-minded. I'll give it a shot. The new DreamWorks movie with the robot and the fox looks really cute, though.
That looks really, yeah. And I look at that and I think, okay, again, with the normies, is a normie really going to come and see this? I don't know, probably not.
Hmm.
But coming as a film buff and someone that goes in depth with storytelling, I think it kind of throws off the vibe for me of Wall-E and the Iron Giant, which I love both of those films.
Oh yeah.
So it kind of gives that quality to it. So I am actually very curious about the Wild Robot.
Yeah. Iron Giant vibes for sure. I thought the same thing, dude.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Just one more thing.
Sure.
I was looking at the charts again for the box office numbers. I didn't realize Madam Web was only 100 million in the box office numbers, but yet on Nielsen is number 3 for Netflix.
And that's incredible that is so high on that list.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
sometimes when we're talking about IPs and how they're familiar and all that, and sometimes people don't like change, Madam Web was also included in that because it was very different. There are, people thought, I heard on X, but I didn't believe it. Like, oh, it's woke because of females. I'm like, but I mean, because it's not Spider-Man, it's Spider-Woman, and yeah. But I think it's because people just didn't trust it. It wasn't Spider-Man. Um, and that's why I didn't go and see it. A lot of Disney films like Wish, I think like Elemental, but Elemental had legs after after a few weeks. I think it was simply because it was their first movie and people just didn't recognize it, and they would rather stay home, wait till it comes on streaming, and order a pizza. I don't think it has anything to do with wokeness, and I don't understand how Wish is woke, but okay.
And I think too, and I think for both of Elemental and Wish, which I enjoy both of those movies, I really do. I think Elemental was a marketing blunder on Disney's behalf. I think that they should have promoted that movie in a much better way than what they did. I think they would have gotten an even bigger response to it. As for Wish, I feel like they over promoted that. When you say this was a movie that was 100 years in the making,
yeah,
and
you
it's
set the
off
bar.
the back, yeah, you're setting the bar from the studio that brought you Snow White, The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. This is like just running down the whole spiel. It was underwhelming because of how hyped up that they made it. And I feel like, and you're right, Seymour, neither one of those things has anything to do with wokeness. It's just under marketing and over promoting. I feel like that kind of did it so people were like, you know what? Yeah, I'm just going to wait for it to be, have it be released on.
I was seeing tweets about Wish on X that movie is woke because the bad guy is white. What are you talking about, dude? Like that.
And honestly, people too also have to, no pun intended with Inside Out too, but it's like, use your own mind. You can read, reviews, you can read opinions or whatever, that's your decision. That's your choice. But don't just go by what a writing is on social media. I'm a huge fan of saying, if it's a movie that you're considering on seeing, but you don't know how you feel about it, go see the movie. Right. If it's a theme park attraction, don't really knock it until you ride it.
You don't know until you try it. I said it many times, my mind has been changed by just experiencing. Like I said, Hollywood Studios was going into my first Walt Disney World trip. I thought Hollywood Studios was going to be my least favorite park. It turned out to be higher on my list than Magic Kingdom. So you just don't know. And George is right. You got to try it.
And that brings up a good point where on Disney Plus and Netflix, it doesn't cost money to change it up and try something new.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So it's not as risky, right? Like you're not. Yeah. Great point, Seymour. Great point. Gentlemen, fantastic conversation. We'll keep our eye on the Inside Out 2 numbers.
Yes.
I think we're going to see, honestly, I think we're going to see very little drop next weekend. I think this thing is going to have some big legs. Go ahead.
And especially since with the pre-sale tickets, who even knows if people bought beyond opening weekend? Because a lot of people don't like to go opening weekend. Sometimes,
sure.
People like to go during the week now that it's summer, or they may want to wait a couple weeks. So yeah, I agree with you. I think this is really going to have legs for sure. And as I said, for someone who has seen the movie, I'm not being biased, it's not because I have that Disney privilege or that special access.
You didn't like Turning Red. You hated that movie, and that's Disney, Pixar, right?
I didn't care for Turning Red. I didn't care for Lightyear. It's just because I just didn't. The storylines just didn't correlate for me. But this movie, I highly recommend for anyone who hasn't gotten a ticket to go see this in theaters. I strongly recommend, honestly, you can wait for Disney Plus, but I say go see it in theaters. Honestly, it would do the theater chain justice. It would do the film even more beneficial to say, you know what, we're all supporting Pixar for this kind of triumphant return. And it's just a great film, honestly. I think this is a well-received film that I think is worthy to see in theaters.
And I will say this too. We didn't even touch upon this, but we are planning on doing a Pete Docter video very soon with our friend Evan. We're gonna deep dive into Pete, Pete Docter. That sounded kind of dirty. I don't mean like that. I don't mean like that. No, but we are gonna do a whole video.
I guess that puts a whole new meaning to Inside Out.
Oh God, George. Oh jeez. No, but this does change the game for Pete, though. I mean, yes. It does. Like this, they have a massive hit on their hands. His job is safe. I mean, a year or two ago, we were talking about like, hey, is he going to stick around with the studio? Oh, he's safe now. Yeah. I'll tell you that. I mean, he is so safe.
Because even though he wasn't the director of this film, he was executive producer, but this is also coming off of a movie that he actually created. Right. He created Inside Out for his own daughter, because it was to tell a story of like the challenges and the changes that his daughter at the time, I believe, was 11 years old. And, that's where, he found that inspiration to make Inside Out. So even though he didn't direct this has Pete Docter written all over it.
Well, it's interesting. And, there have been a lot of criticisms that, Disney let John Lasseter go. John Lasseter is the hit maker, which people seem to forget. John Lasseter had his flops too. The Good Dinosaur is one of them. Cars 2 was also another one that wasn't great. So it wasn't like John Lasseter even had a perfect track record, let's be honest. But this does solidify Pete Docter's leadership a little bit here. Now he has a huge win on his hands. If he can build on this momentum and if he can notch a couple more wins after this movie, I think that all the naysayers about, we should have kept Lasseter, I think it's going to be harder and harder to make that case going forward. If he can lock in a couple more wins, I think one movie, it's too soon, to be fair. But if he can lock in the next one and maybe the next one, and they do very well, I think it's a tough case to be made that Lasseter should come back. I think that Pete Docter will have solidified his rightful spot on the throne. You want to put it. Well, what do you think, Seymour? Go ahead, George.
Really quick, I just want to say yes. After Inside Out 2 next year should be Elio. That got delayed. Right. I think by a year, but yeah, Elio should release next year, and then there's going to be another original Pixar film that's slated to open March 6th of 2026. So there's going to be 2 new original Pixar films, and then after that, we should, what they said is going to be Toy Story 5.
So I think Elio and then the unnamed original after that. If Pete Docter can hit those, like hit home runs for both of those, including what he did here with Inside Out, I think he's golden. But we'll see. Those are riskier though. We don't know. We don't know Elio. Is that going to do banger numbers? It might, but who knows? So, I mean, Toy Story will.
But we also have to consider, too, that Elio was also in production at the time when the studio was kind of going through that weird, transitional thing, like after the pandy and what
Yeah.
have you. So I think honestly, despite of what the numbers are for Elio, and I hope they do well, I wouldn't necessarily put too much thought into, like, for Pete Docter, due to the fact of because this movie was in production for a lengthy amount of time. Then the unknown one for March 6th, that one's going to be very telling.
Yeah, interesting. What are your thoughts, Seymour, on Pete Docter and his solidifying his spot as the Pixar chief?
Great for him. I mean, this movie's gonna do great. Just if he can capture that same magic that everyone's experiencing right now with this movie, with the other two, I think it's gonna be great for Disney because it might bring some faith back into, oh, okay, these Pixar movies are good. Let's go watch the new ones again because it hasn't been like that. You watch Wish, you watch Elemental. It doesn't look like it that, but now when you have these strong numbers, like, okay, maybe Disney is on to something.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And actually, we might even be seeing a little bit of spillover from Elemental into this movie because that movie was actually really, really good.
Mhm.
I slept on that movie. I didn't even watch it until we did a Story Geeks with Jay Shear. I watched it because we were doing an episode on it, and I'm sitting there watching it going, this is a great movie, And maybe people fell in love with that movie like I did, and they're like, hey, that last one was pretty good. Let's check out Inside Out too. You
And
never
then
know.
And then it makes me think, what if people actually saw it on Disney Plus, like Elemental, right? And they're like, it is a good movie. And then they go watch the second one because they already have faith that the good one is already on Disney Plus. So they go see it. And then they see this movie, Inside Out 2. Okay, that one's also good. So why shouldn't we see the other Pixar movies? I think it's going to do great. But I have a question, though.
Sure.
What are your guys' thoughts that Deadpool being so close to Inside Out 2 release date?
Now, when did Deadpool come out, Seymour?
It's coming out next month.
It's July 26th.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're about a month out. Okay, I think it's gonna be okay because I think that it's completely different markets. I don't think they're gonna. You don't now look if Inside Out was coming up against like say for example if Moana was coming out in the end of July, that would be.
Oh yeah.
But I think Deadpool is so raunchy and stuff. Like it's a different market. I don't think it'll be a problem. But
you think
yeah.
it could be potential like a Barbie Oppenheimer situation or no? Or because Inside Out 2 did so well, it's going to push up Deadpool and Wolverine. And, maybe somebody, the parents are like, okay, I'm going to go watch Deadpool. You go watch Inside Out 2.
I think it actually could. I think honestly for Deadpool and Wolverine, I think we could really be seeing like Barbie and Oppenheimer numbers. And as I said, I'm probably wrong. But I'm still just going to stick to this, and I will gladly eat the crow afterwards. I just don't know why. I just have this in my mind that.
So wait, you're saying you're gonna eat crow? You're not gonna pivot? Because everyone's pivoting, bro.
Everyone's pivoting.
That's the new thing.
Everyone's pivoting, but I will eat the crow. I don't know why. I feel like that this could potentially become the first $1 billion domestic film, and I say that because. Yes, I get it. It's a rated R movie, but again, as what we were talking about, Deadpool is a character that has already been put into pop culture cinema. And
Right.
Ryan Reynolds does that character very well.
He is that character.
So, and everyone knows that Deadpool is not your typical character where he can literally go off script. Nothing is like solidified with anything that he says that comes out of his mouth. But then to tie in Wolverine, a character that has been beloved in the MCU, and then also bringing back Hugh Jackman, who again is Wolverine, but he's coming back in the traditional yellow and blue classic Wolverine X-Men style outfit. And also too, if you go and you see the little clip that both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds did for The Silence of Your Cell Phones. At the very beginning of that clip, they're walking down this hallway and they're having a conversation. And Deadpool ends up saying, "Oh, I can't believe that in Secret Wars, we're going to be introduced to," and then the phone rings and it cuts the conversation.
Right.
So this is not even just a film of Marvel's comeback, but I feel like that this is going to be what it's going to be moving forward with the X-Men, with the Fantastic Four, and then also with the Avenger films, like with Secret Wars. Like, who is that really going to introduce? And it has to be somebody big to be relevant enough to mention a kind of like a spoiler without it being a spoiler, like a little teaser, not a spoiler, right? A teaser that somebody big is going to come into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Secret Wars.
Yeah, we'll see.
So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to say this might potentially be the first $1 billion domestic. And watch, it'll hit 999. And it'll stop there.
Hey, look, if it hits, even if it hits, I'll give it to you. If it hits 900 million domestic, I'll give it to you, bro. Like that would be insane. That would be insane. If it hits that number, even 900 milli, that's pretty much there.
Now, it said it's on track for like between 200 to 240 million. What was the opening for Force Awakens?
Oh, good question. I can Google that right now. Force Awakens.
Because the Force Awakens, I think, got, what was it, like almost 940 million?
Let me see here.
Yeah, 936 million.
Yeah, the Force Awakens box office opening weekend was 248 million, and it was 529 worldwide.
Oh, but at the end it was 936 million.
Yeah, at the end it was not. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, if we're projecting like in the 200 million range, I mean, yeah, I could see if it doesn't hit $1 billion, I could possibly see it hitting like at least maybe 800 or 900 million.
Dang, dude, that would be crazy. That would be absolutely crazy. I'm telling you, 2024 to be nuts. Go ahead, Seymour.
Oh, and props to the marketing company that Ryan Reynolds owns, Maximum Effort, because Disney hasn't done really good marketing for their movies, but Deadpool and Wolverine, they've been doing it excellent. Like you were just talking about that one clip in the movie, right? With when the phone rang, that's Maximum Effort. They're owned by Ryan Reynolds. They do a lot of good promotion, including the bucket. They created that bucket too, the popcorn bucket with.
Yes. Yeah, Ryan Reynolds, honestly, as a not even just a person, an actor, but as a businessman, like as an entrepreneur, he does really well with like self-promotion and marketing stuff.
Oh, didn't he started that cell phone company too, didn't he?
Yeah, Mint Mobile, and then he sold it to T-Mobile. He still works there, but he got paid, so he's all good.
Yeah, he made a mint.
Yeah, and then he owns like the football team with Rob from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he has that TV show about it too on Disney Plus.
Wow,
man, I'd love to see just like what's in one of his bank accounts. Whew.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. Well, gentlemen, fantastic conversation. Appreciate you both, George. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And as I said, I'm glad to be back in the OG 55 studio. We got a lot of content coming out. Speaking of Citrus Corner, we do have a show set up for that in the coming days. Definitely check that out. And as OG had mentioned, we're going to be diving deep into the brilliant mind of Pete Docter and kind of seeing like his direction with the Pixar animation studios and where he sees the company going. And it's some of his statements may surprise you. We're going to dive into all of that with our good friend Evan.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Seymour Duck, if you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck. Before I go, though, I recommend Googling Deadpool and Wolverine Beauty and the Beast poster. That was also made by the marketing company Maximum
I saw
Effort.
that too. That was hilarious.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to check it out. So Deadpool and Wolverine Beauty and the Beast poster.
Yes.
Okay, I'll check it out. Awesome. And Seymour, how many followers do you have on X right now? Was it last time I checked? It was like 800, right? Roughly ish.
Yeah, 861.
All right, let's get this guy to 1,000. He's like right there. Come on, so follow Seymour on Twitter. I will be linking his Twitter down below. He does awesome stuff, financials, both Disney, Nintendo. Check it out. So everybody home, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Orange Nerd Show, where we talk mostly about the studio and everything really except theme parks. We even talk music on the Orange Nerd Show. It's pretty fun. But thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts on the Inside Out 2 opening weekend numbers. Everything we discussed today, we would absolutely love to hear from you, whether you agree with us or disagree with us. Just keep it civil in the comments. Thank you.
And you can, and really quick, and you could disagree with us. That's completely fine, but you're just wrong.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like iced tea, I'm OG. Like iced tea, I'm OG. Like iced tea, I'm OG. I'm demon like IT. Got more juice than high tea.